Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two, and I just wanted to say to everybody today, July 2nd, Happy Independence Day. So a little known fact is that the Declaration of Independence was actually voted on July 2nd. That's actually when we voted to be independent. It wasn't until the 4th that signatures actually got on the Declaration, but the vote was actually the 2nd. So depending on your perspective in history, today's Independence Day, or at least in 2 other days. Obviously, the 4th has become the most common accepted date. All right, now we're done with the historical trivia. I have two things I wanted to cover with you today. So it's a great time of year. We just finished up Q2 of 2025. That means two things. We have an updated dose of stats on where we are in the marketplace, and we get the division's quarterly newsletter. So let's start with the stat first. This is just a quick graph of the latest quarter, which are these items here. Okay, and the interesting things, right? The blue line is the median sales price, the green line is inventory, and the black line is the number of sold properties. Okay, so what's interesting about this? Well, conveniently, I circled the ones that are important. So, if you look at the median sales price for the past couple of years, we've been pretty stagnant. And yet, from Q1 to Q2, we actually had a 2.4% increase in one quarter. And that might be like, ooh, look at that. We're turning the corner. I would wait for another quarter or two's worth of data, because if we just go back to the previous year, Q2 of 2024, we haven't even gone up 1% from where the pricing was Q2 2024. Now, I don't share these things with you for trivial pursuit. It's so that you can give some perspective to your buyers and sellers where appropriate. The other circles are inventory. So we just crossed over 17,000 properties, active properties, and that's good because you look at where we've been, same time last year, 15,000, same time 2 years ago, 14,000. So we're trending the right way. But the interesting thing is when you look at 2019 and 2018, the last 2 years that we were normal, those were the years before COVID, we were sitting at 18,000 and 19,000 respectively. So we're closing in on being a more normal market, but we're still not quite there. So again, good information to tell people, 5 years later, population's grown and we still aren't even where we were 5 years ago. So maybe you should be competitive on your pricing. If you're talking to buyers, hey, good news is we haven't had this amount of inventory in 3-4 years. Okay, enough of that. The other thing I wanted to show you was the quarterly newsletter. You know what? Here's something I love. I harped on the division for the past year saying, you guys used to do a PDF version. It went away. It makes it really hard for us as principal brokers to train and annotate and save copies when it's just an online version. They're now giving us a PDF again. So I want to think I had something to do with that, but that's just kind of nerd speak there. All right, so interesting things here. The director of the division kind of showing being proactive and this new term, GRIT, government reform, innovation, and transparency, and just talks about if you go to this link, it will take you to a form. I have agents on a pretty regular basis say, why doesn't the division do this? Why don't they do this? Well, guess what? This link will now take you to a form, and she's actively soliciting this when you read her article. Please give us feedback, big or small. We'd love to hear it. Here's the avenue. You now can do this, right? So good news on that front. Now I want to go to the next item in there, which is just kind of a breakdown on stats from the Division of Real Estate. And it's the one that I think is important for today's message is in the real estate space. What is the breakdown of complaints in the Division of Real Estate? Well, listen, they say they have 266 open cases. The smaller pieces of the pie is in the last quarter. They've received 43 complaints, so 43 of that 266. They closed 31 investigations. And here's the scary one. They have 62 that went through the investigation and have been referred to the Attorney General's office. Now, sometimes that might be a stipulation order that the AG, the Attorney General, has to approve. But these are not to be ignored, and this is why. There's a number of reasons, but this is another reason why we take so much time to make sure we do training for our agents, so you never end up as one of these stats. Because worst case scenario, and we've seen it, people lose their licenses, they lose their livelihood. That's a scary proposition. I mean, a fine is one thing. Having the embarrassment of having your name in the quarterly newsletter is a thing, but losing your livelihood is a big deal. So I hope you understand, when we train on these things, we're not doing it to be a pain in your side, a burr in your saddle. It's to make sure you are able to maintain your livelihood so the company stays healthy and we avoid problems. Okay? All right. The next item is on page 11. And it's this: decoding your CE. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to quickly hit these highlights. Of course, we know there's 18 hours of CE required every 2 years. 9 of those hours have to be core classes, and of those 9, 3 must be the division-approved 3-hour mandatory course. We are working, by the way, at RE/MAX Associates to establish our own version of that so that we can do it internally. Hopefully, we will have that rolled out in Q3. All right. And then if it's your first renewal, in other words, if you're a licensee within the past 2 years, you are required to do, on your renewal cycle, you must do the 12-hour new agent course as part of your 18 hours. The good news is you don't have to go search a lot of other classes, because that one's going to take up a big chunk. Okay? All right. This is the one I wanted to finish up on. And this is, I would dare say, is one of the more significant. So the title of the article is Navigating Agreements, How Explaining Contracts Protects Your Clients and Your License. I, in my own verbiage, said navigating agreements, your obligations under your fiduciaries, right? Anytime we hear the word fiduciary, you need to think of your legal suable responsibilities. Okay, so quickly the highlights. Opening line there that is highlighted is, the division often sees situations where misunderstandings regarding real estate agreements and contracts lead to difficult cases. Let me put that in different words. The public thought their agent should have done a better job explaining the contracts, offers, agency, whatever the case may be, and they didn't do a good job, so we're filing a complaint, and the DRE says, yep, it turns into some difficult cases, which quite often ends up with the licensee in jeopardy. Okay, as a licensed real estate professional, understanding and explaining these crucial documents isn't just a best practice, it's rooted in the rules governing licensee conduct. So making a specific reference to the ADRE rules, okay? Now, this next section is your duty to inform and disclose, and more specifically, you need to, agreements and contracts inherently contain material fact of the transaction detailing the rights, the obligations, and the terms that directly impact your client. And what's our job? Ensuring they understand these terms is a fundamental part of what? The disclosure obligation, your fiduciary of full disclosure. Now, it doesn't mean we need to be attorneys, but we have to have a basic level of knowledge, and we need to inform our clients, especially when asked, what it means. Okay? Then coming down to this section, this isn't a passive requirement. So they're talking about limited agency here, informed consent for limited agency. This isn't a passive requirement. It mandates you clearly explain in writing to both parties that they each could have separate representation. This is why your office managers are, Johnny on the spot going, where is your limited agency consent? And oh, by the way, while we're on that topic, remember this. It needs to be done before you actually enter limited agency, not a, oops, I forgot it. That we've had that a couple times, and the division frowns upon that highly. All right, I'm got to wrap this up. This is a direct rule requiring you to explain the nature and implications of the agency agreement in the transaction. And then lastly, I'm going to go to these red sections. Beyond explaining the contents, you also have a duty to ensure clients have a copy of the documents, right? The documents themselves. Failing to voluntarily furnish a copy of a document before and after executions is grounds for disciplinary action. The good news is, if you're using SkySlope, and not everybody in our company does, some people still want to use, I don't know, DocuSign or other management platforms. Whatever you use, the good news is in SkySlope, you can set up your profile so anytime somebody finishes signing a document, they're automatically sent a copy, and it is journaled, and there is a record that you did send it, so you're fulfilling this one, this last item. The sad news is they are a little behind the curve in their disciplinary actions, so there was no National Enquirer news in this quarter's newsletter. They promised to make up for that in subsequent publications. It's always a little entertaining to see what our peers are getting in trouble for. Anyway, I hope that helps. I hope you truly do have a wonderful Independence Day, and you do have a high degree of appreciation for how good we have it in this wonderful land we live in. With that, have a great one, and we'll talk soon.